Here we are. Good morning, friends. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us for this second episode of Musically Minded. I'm DJ Addambomb. Of course, I've got DJD42 in the house with us here, and we are doing a little experimenting with the audio and stuff here. So we're going to see if things work out. Of course, if it starts feeding back at us all crazily, then Diana will mute and just have to go into chat mode for us. But let's see, can we hear you, Diana? On the delay.
Good morning. Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, look at that. That's a pretty long delay, though. All right, let's see what we can do. So far, so good. And we'll kind of go from there. Thank you all for joining us. I see y'all are filling in the house. Dusty Chin, Bad Man, there he is. Tans Machina, Merid, Seven Sounds. Lots of people showing up over here. I think we had Syrinx in the house? We got Syrinx in the house. Very nice. This is good. All right, let's get this thing started then. Of course, what we are here to talk about is DJing stuff, music, brains, how it all goes together. And so to that effect, of course, if y'all have questions that you'd like us to discuss, that's what we're here to do. Go ahead, throw them up there in the chat room. And of course, Diana's going to let you know she's going to have all the links and everything there. So she'll let you know I've got a new Patreon going there. And so if you support me over on Patreon, you can ask questions over there. As I said last week, I will answer questions there, or I will take the questions from there and answer them when we do the shows here on Sundays. And that's something that you can do, of course, if you're just hanging out here. Throw your questions up in the chat here, and we will talk about just about anything musically minded, because that's what we're here to do. So we are, of course, in recovery mode, as we are so often on Sundays. We had a fantastic retro rumpus last night. Thank you all for joining us for that. And let's see. So, Diana, you're going to have to start talking before I stop talking. But we had a couple of things that we were talking about after the show last week that we kind of wanted to jump back in on. What was that? What was that one that that I said? Oh, that's a good one to get started with. You want to hit us with that one?
You said something about Tom and Jerry.
Oh yeah, Tom and Jerry. Yeah. Okay. So what we were talking about, as I recall, was repertoire and developing musical taste through diversity. Of course, the thing that is one of the things that is intrinsically interesting about music is that there are a lot of commonalities, a lot of patterns, and a lot of things that musicians use to create and somehow also defy expectations in the music for the listener. And the reason that I mentioned Tom and Jerry, and I'm totally blanking out on the composer's name now, who did those. So Diana, if you wouldn't mind Googling that up for us real quick. Who did the music for Tom and Jerry? Because it's great stuff. And I think the interesting thing about his work is that he used a particular theory in his work where he would not repeat the same note. He would not repeat a note in his music until all the other notes had been used. And so it's really interesting stuff. And have we got that up there yet? She's still Googling it for us. She's still Googling it for us. She's still Googling it for us. And boy, my brain's running slow this morning because I can't remember what that theory is even called. So you're going to really have to help me out here, Diana. Scott Bradley. There we go. Knew it was something like that. No, I was totally wrong. All I could think of was Vic Mizzy. He's the Addams Family. Does it tell you in the Google there what the technique was called there, Diana? Because it is an interesting thing. But the other thing that I wanted to mention about the cartoon music, growing up with Saturday morning cartoons, Generation X, and all that kind of thing. We watched a lot of Tom and Jerry and Bugs Bunny, and of course Bugs Bunny is just filled with references that were relevant to the time in which it was created. I mean, the whole thing with him chewing on the carrot was a parody of Clark Gable, right? And so growing up with these cartoons, we were actually exposed to a lot of great and culturally relevant music. I mean, who can think of Ho Ho Toyas without seeing Bugs Bunny riding on the fat horse thing, the Wagnerian operas, they did Barber of Seville and all that kind of stuff. And in Tom and Jerry, of course, we know a lot of jazz music from Tom and Jerry. Is you is or is you ain't, like, we all know Louis Jordan because of Tom and Jerry. So pretty interesting stuff. Of course, all of that lends itself to the conversation of musical histories. And so let's see, where can we go with that? Musical histories. I want to see some questions up there in the chat, people. Musical histories. Everybody has their own musical history, and of course, as DJs, as composers, performers, whatever, we bring everything of our musical history along with us, and from the performance perspective, we're trying to connect to those musical histories of all those minds, all those brains that are in our audience. Every one of them has a musical history. And so a very important thing about DJing is connecting to those musical histories. Now, that's why you end up finding, all these, like, I don't know, you want to call them wedding cliches? We'll call them wedding cliches, right? Like, you go to a wedding and you're going to hear a certain selection of songs that are popular and common to hear. And the reason for that is because, how do I say this? It's expectations that have been formed over time, and it all plays into our musical histories. And in fact, I think, how do I say this? This lends us to the conversation again about tone as well. In that, like, all right, for instance, there was, I just saw right before we started this show, one of my friends had responded to a group post, and the question was, a song you don't play at a wedding. And my friend replied, 88 lines about 44 women. And I think that's actually kind of a poignant little picture to look at there, because obviously at a wedding, you don't want to play like breakup songs or like depressing things, kind of stuff. I mean, not entirely anyway. I mean, everybody likes a little bit of a sad song in there or whatever, but the general tone of a wedding event, right, is going to be lots of love songs. It's all about love. It's all about love. It's all about love, right? And so, during the course of an event, this is again talking about setting the tone. Early in the event, you're going to want to be triggering all of those happy brain chemicals with people, connecting to those musical histories, right? Setting the tone. And so, of course, we're going to choose things, like, Fly Me to the Moon and that kind of stuff, all these wonderful classic love songs that you're going to end up hearing at a wedding. Um, and of course, this is going to apply to any event, any kind of gig. Like you're doing a goth club. Um, you want it to sound like a goth club, right? You're doing any kind of an event. Um, you're gonna set the tone, right? And then you want to try to work those musical histories. That's what gets people up onto the dance floor, really, is songs that they know. And of course, we talked about this a little bit last week, is how do you keep them up for songs they don't know? And that's your flow. And I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about some tricks on how to do that. Let's see. I think we have a question up there from Dusty Chin. You want to read that out for us there, Diana? Can you? On the delay.
If you can wait for the delay.
Mm.
Your lead-in kicked this thought in my mind. Do you ever solicit the client for their musical history?
Yes. In fact, all right. So we had talked a bit about presetting expectations last week, and what an important concept that is. And this is another time where that phrase is going to rear its lovely head. Presetting expectations. I mean, it's one of the most important conversations that I have with a client. Again, especially for the, like wedding gigs kind of things, and when you're talking about the nightclubs and stuff, obviously, that you don't really have somebody that you're going to have a conversation with about that kind of thing. It's like, you've been there, you've experienced it, you've done it, and that's how you know, right? With wedding clients, when you're working with a client, they, of course, the couple are going to have their own musical history, their families, and all of that, and that is a huge part of the conversation. Sometimes even before, I'm going to say oftentimes even before they've booked me to actually play their event, just when they're talking to me, before we've talked about paper or money or any of that kind of stuff. Now I want to get right in there, and I want to know about that musical history. How do I find that out? Now that's a question. I will ask the clients, I will say, okay, I want to know the songs that your parents danced to at their weddings. I want to know what songs you sang with your friends on road trips in the car. You know what I mean? I want to know, like, what songs you and your friends did stupid performance skits to in the high school talent show or grade school gymnastics routine, whatever it was. All of those things lend themselves to insight into the musical history. And there's, I would say that's just a handful of basic questions that I'll get into, but I want to know as much as I can. Of course, one of the things that's really helpful to the DJ for these type of events is asking the clients for a top 20, 30, 40, whatever, where they can take their time, do a little bit of homework themselves, write down the songs that come to their mind that they might want to hear at the wedding, stuff that they know their friends like to dance to. They might even go and ask their friends and say, hey, what's a few things you think that we ought to have at the wedding, that kind of thing. And then that way, as a DJ, I can get much more insight into their musical history, also through their friends. and through their family, and all of that comes together when well, yeah, Dusty Chin, yes, setting the tone. So that's where it all comes together. Um, and you're absolutely right. That is how we build connections. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to synchronize all of these brains in the room together. Okay, we what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I'm trying to pull a word out of my mind here. Um, Attrainment. That's what I'm looking for. And entrainment. Trainment. Entrainment. So, entrainment is what happens. Like, say, you've got two pendulums on a wall, equal length, that kind of thing. You set them off at different paces, and then they will eventually synchronize. Right? It's a good trick. It's true. Try it. Pendulums will synchronize, and and that's called entrainment. And I think that our brains work this way as well. We, as DJs, are as any kind of musician, as any kind of performer. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get the audience into a collective mind state, which is, how would you say, receptive to what we're doing. To get all of the minds on one page, we're going to use these connections and say, and create that tone, and align all of these brains. And now, how does that actually come out in performance? Right, is the next question. How does entrainment work when you're a performing DJ? Here's how it works. Early in the night, you're starting off usually with like cocktails and dinner and that kind of stuff. You're not playing the heavy dance music. But what you want to do is, instead of just like putting something on and letting it play or whatever, which sometimes you have to do because, of the layout of the venue or whatever, where you're like, yeah, just give us a playlist and we'll do it in the other room for cocktails. Kind of hate doing that. I personally love to spin cocktail hour and dinner music, because it is such a great way to get all of the minds synchronized and trained, all working together, as a mass audience. And so what I'm doing is I'm using the elements that they've given me of their musical history. I'm extrapolating from that through my experience, right? Saying, well, if they like this, then they'll probably like this. If they like old time rock and roll, they will probably like Brown Eyed Girl. You know what I'm saying? There's that your experience makes more connections, to help bring them in. And another thing that I really like to do is, like, I try to set up sounds that I will be using in the future, right? So instead of like just playing Frank Sinatra and stuff during cocktail hour, I'll mix it up and I'll play some modern things as well that fit the tone. And then that way, all of these minds have been somewhat preset that, oh, there's going to be more of this later. And now here's what I really love about cocktails and dinner, right? And this, we were talking about this last week too, right? Which is like, how a DJ learns to control an audience. When you're playing songs and you're looking out at the audience, you're watching to see how they react. And now, we're not talking about like everybody screaming and throwing their hands up on the dance floor. That's later. we're talking about like they're all around having conversations. They haven't seen each other in years, whatever. They're catching up. They're talking about their business trips and whatever, their medical problems, all that kind of shit. The music at that point is background, right? But what happens is you'll start to see people, it's like, you throw on something and you're like, yeah, let's see if I can get things a little groovier here. And you maybe put on a little Stevie Wonder or something, and you start seeing them like bop around and stuff. You get them bopping around, you get them bopping around, you get them bopping around. And then that's how you know that they're ready for a little more of that and a little more of that. And one of the things that I discovered a long time ago that I don't like doing is like getting on a microphone and being like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, the dance floor is now open. I like to get them kind of dancing and just let it happen organically. It's like, once they're done eating and having a dessert and stuff, and you've built up that pressure enough and you've built up that groove enough, you get that first few people that come out onto the dance floor, and then a few more people come out on the dance floor, and then the next thing you know, you've got it blowing up. And let's see. I see some other stuff is going on in the chat over here. I haven't taken a look back at it. Diana, you want to catch us up here? Where are we at? I need to hydrate. Have we lost Diana? Did we lose Diana on the audio? That'll happen. All right, well, let me see here. Reading. Setting the tone, yes. Totally anecdotal. Okay, so from Dusty Chin, he says, okay, this is totally anecdotal and hopefully an aberration, but I've heard of some wedding events where the DJ used almost none of the stuff that clients requested. Oh, gosh. Oh, good. Okay, we've got you. In my opinion, would that be just a weird oversight or intentional omission for some other reason, or maybe the DJ just hated the clients? And then Tans Machina responding with, sounds more like a DJ stuck in his own ego. I'm going to agree with that, Tans Machina, 100%. Should we talk about DJ egos? I mean, is that a thing that we should go in on? If I mean, I'm gonna start getting kind of opinionated, I think, if we start talking about DJ ego. And I'm not gonna lie, I've got one. I'm not gonna lie. I'm Loki says that I don't so much have an ego as that I'm just supremely confident in what I'm doing. And that is super true. I have been doing it a long time, so I am like super confident in what I'm doing, and I definitely do have an ego that I like to think that I have used my ego to push myself to be as good as I think I should be, which is not anybody else's criteria, really. Like, okay, I got a story for you. When I started my DJ career, I worked for a big agency up here in New England, and we had over 50 DJs in the company, and over a couple of years, I became one of the, if not, I was the top DJ in the company. I'm not going to lie. And the reason for that was because I was one of the only ones who was really doing it truly full time. So I would do all the weird midweek events, at whatever discounted rates, because I wanted gigs. And in 5 years, I did over 1,000 gigs with that agency, which is pretty ridiculous. And yes, I did do 270 gigs in 1 year. And yes, I have done triples in a day where I've done 3 gigs in a day, kind of thing, working from the very wee hours of the morning to the very, very wee hours of the next morning. And when I was working for that agency, so see, there was my ego talking right there, because I was like, look at all the cool shit I've done. But the story that I really want to tell is about a dude that I worked with there named Jake. And Jake, oh gosh. So this guy, the first time when he was training and he came out on a training gig with me, to assist me, the first gig that he came out with me was like a corporate holiday event kind of thing. And within the first like couple hours, he was drunk, and I had to send him out to the car until the end of the gig, because I did not want him being drunk representing our company there. And how do I say this? I made the mistake of not reporting that to my bosses, and kind of being like, Mr. Nice Guy, and like, oh, well, he made a mistake. He's not used to, being a professional party person. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're a professional party person, you got to hold your shit together. And and so he ended up staying in the company. And the reason that I say that was a mistake was that this guy, after a few months of being there, kind of thing, after kind of getting his, getting in his training and stuff, he was of the opinion that he didn't need to know more than like 40 songs, because that was all that he would need to do these weddings, right? Like, he was basically like, I just play these same bunch of songs in the same order, and that's it. That's all I need to do. That's all I need to do is play, just play songs in order. That's all I need to do. He didn't give a shit about DJing. What he cared about was paychecks from weddings. You know what I'm saying? The reason that became truly tragic, and the reason that I left the company, was because our brilliant operations manager left because he hadn't had a raise in 5 years. And Jake was promoted to the position of operations manager. And I simply could not work under somebody with that kind of an attitude towards a business and a thing that I truly love doing. So yes, there are definitely DJs out there that have absolutely no interest in improving their performance skills or in being good DJs at all. They think it's just enough to do that. Like Jake wouldn't pay any attention to your request list either. And in fact, here's another funny little story. I was married very briefly for a few years, a very long time ago. How would you say, an ill-fated mistake of my own. But it is very, very relevant to my DJ career, because we had the worst fucking DJ, and he totally did that. Like, he played all the stuff that that we had requested, that we would have danced to with our club friends. He played it all during dinner, and then during the dancing part, he was like just catering to the grandparents. It was like slow song after slow song after slow song, and he couldn't get anybody to dance. And instead of playing, to the people who were there who loved to dance and go out dancing all the time, he was trying to play all the standard wedding crap that we didn't want to hear. And so the thing that's kind of funny about that is that when I got back from my honeymoon there, I came home to a message on the machine that was like, yeah, we'd like you to come in for an interview for the DJ agency. And so I have carried with me through my entire career, almost 30 years now, this this memory of this DJ that totally did not connect to the audience at my wedding, you know, with my friends, not even with our family really, except for getting the grandparents out to dance for the slow stuff, you know. And so, you know, I know last week I told the story about being at an 8th grade dance. When I'm the DJ, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to cut off the song, kind of thing. And that's another thing that, you know, I carry with me in my career. And because of that, because of having that bad DJ at my wedding, I determined in that moment, when I'm the DJ, I'm not going to do that. Like, I want to hear what they want to hear. Like, I don't care if I don't know it. I don't care if I don't like it. What matters is they do. They know it. They like it. It's part of their musical history, and it's their fucking wedding. And so yeah, I have a thing, like, you know, it's okay to be confident in what you do. And in fact, I think that you're you know, how do I say this? Like, if your mouth is writing checks that your talent can't cash, that's a problem. You know, like, DJ ego. The thing that uh, the problem with having an ego in this way is that it just prevents you from being a better DJ. Like, it just prevents you from learning more, and it prevents you from hearing in this way, if that makes sense. Like, if you're not hearing what your clients are saying to you, you're not going to connect with them on the dance floor. And I think that's pretty good rabbit hole to run down for that. Can you believe we've already been doing this a half an hour, Diana? This show goes by fast. All right, what's the next thing on the list here? Do we have any more? Dusty Chin says, Bleck, that guy sounds like the Donald Trump of the DJ world. You know, you're not wrong, man. You're not wrong. You know, I like the word quality with a capital Q, and this is something I get from it's Robert Preisig, right, that wrote Zen and the Art of the Motorcycle Maintenance. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. He uses the word quality with a capital Q to sort of symbolize a greater meaning behind the word quality. You know, that the underlying depths of quality. Ben, I'm not even gonna say that on the microphone, but that's funny. Pardon my shitty lungs. You make me laugh and I start to cough. Diana, what's the next thing on our prompts here? Do we have any other questions or notes here that that we should be getting on to next? Who's got questions? I want to see the questions up in the thing. Tricks and toolkits. You know, you're right, Diana. We're in a pretty good place to talk about some tricks. I was kind of talking about that a little bit already. I was talking about you know, doing the cocktail grooves and that kind of thing, and you know, getting the toes tapping, and that is a trick. That trick is less of a technical trick and more of a psychological one, though. And we will talk about both. I'm sorry to hear that your lungs are totally effed up too, Ben. But yeah. So let me see. Let me load my brain up real quick here. Um, Boy, okay. There's a lot of tricks and tools that we use in music to create emotion. Um, uh, Boy, that's the thing that's tough about that is actually knowing where to begin when we talk about stuff like that, because there are so many tricks that we use. And we were talking last week about key, right? Every song has a root note, a key, and we use that as a way of lifting or like we can use key to lift the mood or to make the mood feel more sinister. There's a lot of different ways that we can use key. You know, uh, when your keys when it feels like the key of each piece is going up, right? It's a constant lift, and of course the fun thing about the circle of fifths here is that you can create an ever rising feeling by going around in this way, or however it is. Um, you can create an ever rising feeling um, by modulating your keys ever upward from where you are. It's a circle. You can do, and when I'm doing goth clubs and like more sinister stuff, I tend to be going downwards in the key because you're trying to make it deeper and deeper and deeper and more gut feeling, like ooh, 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 you know. Going up makes you go wee, wee, wee. Going down makes you go ooh, I feel that. Oh, pain. Oh, Morrissey, I saw what you did to me right there. Yeah. Going down makes you feel uh more of that. Going up makes you feel more of that. So that's one trick that we'll use. um Obviously we have a lot of different tools in our there's a lot of different ways that you can put music together. And uh of course, matching tempos, beat matching, right, is a huge thing that we talk about all the time when we're talking about mixing. I want to make this clear. It's not the only tool in the toolkit, but it is sure a good one. Um, Matching tempos. Uh, Matching tempos helps you to flow from one song to another to make them sound like they're the same song, and hopefully in creatively speaking, you're kind of making something new out of the two of them, um, by putting them together. Um, Obviously, not all songs are going to mix that well together. And so, one of the things that we have to be very conscious of when we're DJing and when we're mixing is that, we're not taking something that is very full sounding and trying to slap it together with something else that's very full sounding, because it's going to be very noisy and like fill all the frequencies and interfere with each other. So I have sort of adopted from the painter's world a concept. I say mixing thick over thin or thin over thick. Um, so if you've got something that's very very full, you want to have something that um, is going to give it space in the frequencies, and the tools that we have, we can manipulate that. We have EQs, we have filters, and we have we have effects that we can use um, in our performance to produce these mixes, and create that space in the mix. So when I do this, usually what I mean is like low frequencies to high frequencies, low frequencies to high frequencies. So if something is very, very full and there's a lot going on in the high frequencies, and the thing that I'm mixing into it has a lot going on in the low frequencies, then I'm going to want to remove low frequencies as I from the track that I'm playing, as I bring in the low frequencies from the other track, or vice versa, and all that. That's what I mean by thick over thin, thin over thick. And we use these tools to sculpt out the frequency ranges, to make the transitions less jarring. And in fact, a lot of times if you got something that's got a lot of high end going on, you'll cut the high end EQ, or sweep in the highs from something else to bring in that sound or whatever. But that's one of the tricks that we'll use is our EQs to accomplish that. Let's see, that's another trick in the toolkit. Dusty Chin has another one up there. Okay, weird sidebar. If you ever spy anyone in the crowd abusing someone else, how do you handle that type of a bad scene? And this can include the aforementioned DJ Snacks raping and pillaging the Italian cookie table. Well, I mean, if the DJ, how do I say this? If the DJ, yeah, punch them. That's a good one, Merritt. I like that. If there's someone in the crowd abusing somebody else, security. I just spilled coffee all over myself because I was swirling the honey at the bottom of it there. That was smooth, Adam. Looks real good on camera. Interestingly enough, at the Salem Witches Ball this year, for the first time ever in 2 decades of doing that party, there was a fight that broke out on the dance floor. Somebody spilled a drink on somebody else or something, and it started an altercation, but it was over within seconds. And what did I do? I just pulled down the music for a second and said, "Security to the dance floor, please. Security to the dance floor, please." And I popped it right back up. I have definitely been in situations where like the cops come and you have to stop the music, that kind of shit. When we're stuck behind the DJ booth, there ain't much that we can do. But we do have control over the microphone, and so that is our one tool that we have when something's not going, when something's not kosher in the venue. So the one thing that we have is the microphone, and and in almost every situation, the best thing to do is let security do their job. I would say the last thing that you want to do as a DJ is get involved, because it could end up in broken equipment, or physical altercations, even worse. Your microphone is your power in that situation, and that is another that does fall under tricks, by the way, because your microphone is a pretty good is a pretty powerful device. When you're holding the microphone, all eyes are on you, so other ways that we can use the microphone, even when we're transitioning between two things, like one thing that we don't want is just cold. We don't want dead air. So sometimes the best thing to do to get from one place to another in a set is to jump on the microphone and say, okay, we're going someplace else now. It might be to introduce a request. It might be just to let people know something that's going on. Like, oh, in about 5 minutes, we're going to get everybody together for a group picture. So let's do that. In the meantime, let's take this in another direction. Here's something slow for the couples out there or something. The microphone. Yeah, obviously, in broadcasting, the microphone is the super most important thing. But yeah, when you're doing weddings and stuff like that. Now, I'll say this, when you're doing clubs and stuff, you almost never use a microphone, man. And um, it's like, other than maybe a mic in for last call or something, you don't really use the microphone when you're doing club sets. That's not what clubs are about. Clubs are about losing your mind in the music entirely, and it's very different from functions. Um, I will say this, Ben. I've seen some shitty things go on at gigs. I mean, I again, way back when I was working for the agency, I would do the mitzvahs and stuff like that. There was one, these kids like completely trashed the fucking place, like 13-year-old boys, without much supervision, I guess. It's like the boys went and they took all the glow stick things, the giveaways, and they cut them open and they totally trashed the men's room in there. Yeah, but that's the parents' job to watch them, not your job as the DJ. You know what I mean? I've definitely seen fights break out at weddings. Um, it happens sometimes. Thankfully, it's pretty rare. I mean, I'm gonna say this, like, I've done thousands of gigs, and I'm talking about a couple of like really specific incidents because they stick out in my mind because they are that uncommon. You really don't run into all that much. Like DJing is a pretty good job, but you'll run into sometimes where, like, you know things have just gone too far. People have gotten too drunk. There are, one of the things about families that families have musical histories. They also have drama and baggage. But thankfully, it's pretty rare that you have to interrupt a performance to to deal with an issue like that. Thankfully. Dusty Chin, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got to get going, and we'll be here next week too. So come on by, and we'll keep doing this thing. Diana, where did I leave off before I started running down that whole rabbit hole? Yeah, this delay is killing me. We'll try doing it a different way. We'll experiment with it a little bit during the week here and see if we can find a better way to get this microphone thing going here.
Oh.
Tips and tricks. All right. Oh gosh, yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we take
Yeah.
All right, we're in the last 10 minutes of the show here. Maybe we can talk a bit more about this during the show next week. I think tips. I think tips and tricks is going to be one of those things that are going to be kind of a constant through the course of Musically Minded, because almost all of the things that we're talking about eventually end up having some sort of trick behind it that we will use as DJs to affect the brains that we're talking about. All right, so a little while ago I was talking about frequencies and about how we use the EQs, and I think it's really important, and I want to just take this few minutes before we close off the show and say goodbye, to talk about the effects of frequencies on our bodies, on our minds, and a couple of insights into that. And so the first thing I want you all to do is to think about that scene in Jurassic Park, right? When they're all in like the Jeep together, right? And there's the water glass on the dashboard. Why anybody would put a water glass on a dashboard, I don't know. But it's like, you know, there's the barely audible, so low it's barely audible boom of the dinosaur stepping, you know, and you see the ripples in the water on the in the drinking glass, right? And it's so low, and the tension is so sublime in that moment, because it's like it's so low you can barely hear it, but you can see it vibrating in the thing, and you know that those people are just feeling that in their bodies, that boom, and you can't tell where it's coming from. And I think that's just such a great example of how sub bass works. Sub bass, you know, we're talking, you know, you're under, you know, 180 hertz or so. Sub bass, very low bass, has no direction. That is why when you have your multiple point audio setups, you know, it's like you have stereo, right, left and right. Of course, when we're DJing, we're almost always left and right, and then we'll have the subwoofer, right, and that subwoofer, uh, uh, there's no directional sound, so that, you know, it's mono essentially. As far as our brains are concerned, it's mono. I mean, we can be sending stereo, we'll send stereo signal to it, but we don't experience it in stereo. Like, our brains cannot tell where sub bass is coming from, which is why that deep stomping T-Rex sound is so palpable and so terrifying, because there's no way of like, where is it, where is it, where is it. We feel bass very much in our guts, and so here's another thing that's very interesting about bass and about rhythm. Now, you know, talking less about sub bass now and more about like your kick range of bass, you know, your kick drums, doomph, 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 right? We human beings, human brains, and in fact, it goes all the way, you know, back into lizard brain territory here. We have evolved over, you know, many millions of years, to be super sensitive to timing in those frequency ranges. And the reason for that is pretty much the same reason as the T-Rex being terrifying, right? Because regular rhythm means maybe something's coming at you. Boom, 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 boom. That, if you're a lizard sleeping on a branch and something goes boom, 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 you know, you're like, what the heck is going on? I better hide. And that's why we do that. Whereas like if it's just like a wind blowing a branch and it's going like dock, 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 we're more likely to dismiss it because we're like, that's not something coming to get me. What that lizard experience is very different, you know, maybe from the way that we're going to respond to that as human beings. But the important thing to remember is that we are super sensitive to timing in the bass range. We are much less sensitive to timing in the high end. And so when we're mixing, this is why you have to have your kicks like super on point. You have to have your low frequencies need to be super perfectly synchronized. The higher range stuff, the higher frequency it is, the less likely we are to notice if the timing is slippery. And we will use that trick to some degree in music production, we definitely use that trick. Like, we use those frequencies to create width. We are using delays and stuff to create artificial sense of space and that sort of thing. And that is, again, very much something that our brains do, is that we use our stereo hearing to literally understand the shape of the room or the space that we're in. So you can close your eyes and you can clap your hands, and if you're in a small space, you'll know you're in a small space because it'll go tack, 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 tack. And if we're in a big space, it'll go tack, 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 tack. So you'll know just, by the ambient sounds in the room, what this scope, the shape, the size of the room is. And of course, we use that in production. We call it reverb. and and a lot of times when we're mixing two different songs together that have different qualities of reverb, one of the tricks that we're going to want to use is those EQ cuts, right? Where we'll maybe cut the EQ back in the high end so that it sounds flatter, and mixes more cleanly with what we're doing. Then we add it back. When we're mixing kick drums, again, if we're not super synchronized, the audience is going to notice it. That's what we call a train wreck, when they're not quite synchronized. It sounds like sneakers in the dryer. Da-dunk, 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 da-dunk. Right? People are super sensitive to that. That's what we were talking about last week. That's a speed bump on the dance floor. So again, when we're talking about frequencies, and the way that our brains respond to them, you got to remember that rhythmic stuff is all the way buried in that, like, lizard brain. Is in there somewhere, and it's like deep in the brainstem from when we barely had brains at all. The low frequencies are what we synchronize to with our bodies. Again, that entrainment, right, is boom, 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 boom. That's what we're shaking our hips to. Boom, 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 boom. And the high frequencies, that's the stuff that we feel up here, it's the swirlies. It's what makes your hands go up like whoosh. Oh, that's called a riser, by the way, and that's a good trick on its own. A riser, oh my gosh, we do this all the time in music. Not just electronic music. Electronic music, it's like super, super prevalent. Has been, Giorgio Moroder used them. But in electronic music, we use white noise filter sweeps. So white noise is all the frequencies at once, like when you've got the TV on static, right? And then we filter that with equalization, and so we can make it go. That's a riser, or right. We can make it feel like it's going up. We can make it feel like it's going down. We can use bass drops, do the same thing. Bass drops make it feel like it's going down. Doom, it's going down, right? And then you got the ambient part. And we can use these tricks as well. Actually, if you listen to old rock and roll music, you'll hear the same tricks, because the guitarist will slide up on the, or down, or the bass guitar, or you'll hear the drums, that's right, or increasing the speed, those are all ways of creating rise or creating a fall, right. We use these tricks in DJing as well. Do it all the time with the filter sweeps, to bring something in, it's going doom, 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 and bang, it's a song, oh shit, you're right, Diana. It is 3:00, and I think that's a pretty good place to pin the conversation until next week. And so, on that note, all right. So let's see, Diana. You've been letting everybody know all the good things we've got going on, right? And um, Wednesday, of course, we've got New Music O'Clock over on MTV TV. Pirate Red Seth is hosting this week, so you don't want to miss that one. Of course, every Saturday nights, we've got the live DJ shows here on Twitch at 8 o'clock Eastern, and on Sundays, Recovery Day, 2 o'clock Eastern, we'll be here for Musically Minded. I've got the new Patreon, Addambombb DJD42. Feel free to ask me questions over on Patreon. I'll either answer them over there, or we will talk about them on the show in the future. And think about your questions for next week, won't you, please? And come and join us over here in the chat for that as well. And I think on that note, Diana and I are going to try to figure out a little better audio solution for next time. We've discussed maybe trying it with Zoom and stuff, but I like my pretty little set here. So we'll do a little experimenting and see what we can come up with to make the show run a little smoother and not be hectically trying to figure out the audio at the last minute. Thank you, Syrinx. Thank you, Seven Sounds. Thank you all for coming out and joining us this afternoon. We'll see you next week on Musically Minded. You know what I need? I need my theme song. I forgot to set it up over here. There we go. Real pro over here. We're going 100% pro. And thanks again, y'all. See you soon.